I always think it's funny using the word ultimate as if any advice I'm going to give you is going to create an opportunity for you to be the very best. Obviously, that's not true. I don't want to falsely advertise the kind of information that I'm going to give you today. But what I am going to tell you is I don't know where your bar is on how you do your business, but without adding listings to what you do, and I understand that the numbers speak for themselves. It is a lower cost of entry to be a buyer's agent. It is a slightly lower level of responsibility and customer hand holding on the buyer's side to be a buyer's agent. But if you can get your rhythm and become a listing agent, I'm here to tell you that it will boost your success. It will allow you to partner with more clients. It will expand your client reach. It will streamline workflows, and the experience will allow you to deliver smoother closings. I have to say that probably the biggest component of my success has been my ability to do multiple property types, commercial and residential, understanding how to properly business broker, as well as be able to split a business deal away from the business itself and the property itself, and all of the caveats that come with it. To box myself in to do one thing or another, I think would be a huge weakness to my business and probably wouldn't make me a very good broker. So whether you're new at this and you're just trying to build some traction, or you're a team leader mentoring newer agents, or of course my seasoned following, smartest way to deliver business and how to get more for yourself is going to be on the listing side. Whether you want to do this on your own or whether you want to partner up with multiple agents and combine your strengths, reaching a wider audience, setting yourself up for success in a workload, and sharpening a listing strategy, pricing, positioning, marketing. If you do it right, it's going to raise your quality of service. It's going to expand the exposure that you get online, and it's going to lead to faster, cleaner closings while you're active. Listing isn't always the right move for everybody. It takes a lot more patience, a lot more time, alignment, organization, partnering with your clients, heavy amount of communication and understanding. They're not going to know why their house is performing one way or the other. They are not going to simplify the transaction to it takes one client. I don't care if 5 million people are looking at your property, one is the buyer. It's going to require you to align appropriately on your goals, on the roles of the transaction, and your attitude, good or bad. What we're going to talk about today, when I say ultimate guide, is walking you through everything that you need to know. We're going to include when you partner up, why are you going to be the right agent, how you're going to structure the deal, and how you're going to make the client partnership most profitable without headaches and hard feelings. So, what is a listing and how does it work? A listing happens when a real estate agent takes the responsibility to market and sell a property on behalf of an owner. One of the most interesting things about the real estate business is that we don't own inventory. We don't have a warehouse full of things that we have to distribute. We have to petition clients that have homes to represent them in selling that home. The reason that they negotiate a commission with us is because of the level of effort, the level of professionalism, and honestly, the approach that we take to market and represent during negotiations once contracts have even come in. As the agent named as the listing agent, you're going to have to work with from pricing all the way to closing. The buyer's agent only takes on half of those activities, and they have to negotiate with you. Each agent has to contribute on both sides of the transaction a complete network, and expertise, and time to give the seller broader coverage and better service. And again, whether you're doing this as an individual agent, a team of agents, co-listing, if you're going to do it that way, you have to give the time and the effort to the listing client daily, explaining the scope of business so that you continuously accelerate their learning and their confidence in you in representing their home. Because at some point, they're going to get frustrated. And the amount of information you have given them and the confidence you have brought to these conversations is going to make this either a very easy or very difficult conversation to have. Listings allow you to accelerate your learning as well. You get more property knowledge. What we call in the business, you'll learn product knowledge. You'll learn more about how a home is built, how a resale home condition matters, what matters on the buyer's side, buyer's feedback, and how to present it back to the listing owner. Many agents are going to default in this situation when they feel stretched or out of their depth to just kind of letting it ride and let the throw the Google transition at things, or pull up some fast AI explanations that you can read back to your client. When it gets to this point, you probably got to figure out what the smarter play is going to be. You can't just hand off a client. A listing client isn't going to go away. They're under a responsibilities agreement with you, a representation contract for typically 3 to 6 months while you sell their home, depending the length of that contract, depending on the strength of the market or how fast that property type in the area you're representing moves. Listings keep you in the deal. You are the workload. You are the decision maker. You set the commissions for both sides and negotiate those things as you move forward based on level of effort and level of transparency and level of activity that you are seeing from the buyer side. You need to stay visible with the client at all time, and you need to be involved in every stage of the transaction. I personally believe that the listing agent takes a much heavier role and a heavier hand from contract to close. I personally think that they need to trust that the buyer's agent is doing their job, but they need to verify on a daily basis. Even though the buyer's agent is checking in and making sure things are done, ultimately, if the buyer doesn't buy this property, they move on to another property. Your listing, you're the golden goose. Your job is to make sure your product, the contracts, all of the moving parts, I feel, are much heavier in the balance of things on the listing agent side. Without a good listing agent, you may sell your home, but you're not going to get the maximum price point. You're not going to price appropriately for the market. Your home may sit on the market for a long time because your listing agent doesn't understand how to market and doesn't understand how to communicate with buyers agents that are showing interest. At the same time, the listing agent is the one that better be able to shine when it comes to negotiations, localization in the neighborhood. The things that bring experience pay for the higher tier of pricing. Effective listing agents tend to blend complementary skills. However, a bad listing agent can lead to an insane amount of confusion. The balls drop when agents just don't set clear roles of communication. Just recently, we're dealing with when lines of communications multiply with a level of complexity on, God forbid, both sides of the transaction, it's going to multiply the stress on the sellers and the buyers. You have to be able to make it easy for all parties involved in a very complex transaction, informational contact. Otherwise, all of that data gets scattered and siloed. The temptation to assume that someone else is handling tasks and doing the job is also a snake pit that you got to be very careful not to fall into. You have to override that instinct that everybody is good at this job. You have to do deliberate check ins. You have to sometimes handle surprisingly difficult situations because one agent might feel overworked or having a bad day and brought that problem to the transaction with them that day. This is why choosing your listing partner is going to be so very critical to my clients out there. When you're dealing with a brokerage that has a very tight communication plan with all of their agents, being a listing agent inside of a brokerage like that is even better. It allows for broader marketing and an exposure. If the broker is good at what he does, she does, it's very simple for them to find an agent who's showing up on their report as having a new listing. They can increase the networks, the databases, the marketing channels to potentially reach more buyers. You can share the workload. You can share some of the marketing, some of the showing, some of the open house work. Client communications are divided, reduces burnout. Let the brokerage work together. And nothing is more celebrated than the same brokerage doing the buy side and the sell side. Complementary skill sets. By working within your brokerage as well, you're going to be able to pair up on negotiating, on marketing, on understanding how to keep the listing moving. It's service continuity. If one of them needs to take a break or take a day off, even, or get sick, somebody can take up that rope and continue to pull this thing across the finish line. There's some mentoring opportunity and growth opportunity there too for you newer agents. It'll help you gain some credibility by working with a seasoned listing agent and allow you to experience working with a seasoned partner. It's going to give you still the same edification that you need to be in this industry. It's going to give you an extra level of confidence because you're going to see transactions from both sides. The reason that in normal industry there's a lot of success when you hire on an industry partner, because those folks have been on the other side. They give you an insight, a prospect, if you will, into how the transaction is viewed from outside of your normal day-to-day activities. Promise you, for less luxury listings especially, which are already high stakes, which translates very easily to high effort, multiple agent coverage is a godsend. Now, the conflicts that show up, the complications that arise from being a listing agent is handling the commission splits, handling how that negotiation happens, the take home pay if you listed the property incorrectly. You have to be very careful. Sometimes giving up more of the split for what your client agreed to because the buyer side is bringing more to the table. All of these things are consistently negotiable when you walk through this. Potential confusions occur without defined roles. Tasks are going to get duplicated. They're going to get missed. It's going to cause an insane inefficiency. Your reputation is also at risk. The way you respond and the way you handle your professionalism inside of the transaction will directly reflect on you. And ultimately, loss of control. You're going to need to compromise as the listing agent. You're going to need to understand that representing the client, representing the property, dealing with the complications that a buyer is going to bring in, knowing that not every contract is the right contract, knowing that not every agent on the buyer side is the agent that needs to be worked with, clashes of personalities and process. You're going to need to be able to recognize all of that. You are the Sherpa that's going to guide this entire thing from start to finish. So if you're heeding my warning, listing agents don't just have a clean path laid out for them. It's going to show that when the client picked you, you were the right partner. And if they didn't, it can make or break the deal for them. Listing agents have got to be able to show their strengths. They've got to be able to fill gaps. And the first thing that you want to do when you're interviewing listing agent is start with the skills. Even if they're newer agents, by the way, you still need to look for an agent that understands what they need to do. And if they're a new agent, don't be afraid to hire them as long as they have good support that they can show you a strong brokerage with a strong reputation, a broker that will be involved, a mentor that is working with them to keep things going. You still want to add some experience to the game regardless. If you are able to choose an experienced agent, great. Then you're going to find an agent who's got the time, the energy, and the marketing horsepower. Look them up, check them on social media, see how many places they have been and the experience that they have brought to the table, but also balance. Each person's got to be able to bring a distinct value into the transaction. And sometimes it's just as simple as availability. Pay attention to how reliable these people are. How fast does the agent respond? How often do you get clear updates? Consistent follow through keeps the process smooth. An agent who ghosts you midweek or ignores feedback is going to cost you a lot of time and credibility as an owner. You need to be able to set communication expectations early. And agents, you need to tell your client how you prefer to be communicated with and how do they prefer to communicate with you. And consider the brand, not just the brokerage that they are licensed with, but who are they publicly? I hate to bring politics into it, but if your parents haven't taught you this, now that you are all becoming of age, the things that you've posted about yourself on the internet are who you are as a person. You need to make very clear as a real estate agent to get separation between your personal life and work life. And sometimes, depending on social media, it's not so easy to do. Listing agents or those that are seasoned in the listing, make sure you're showing off past listings. Pull it right up in the multiple listing service if you need to, but being able to show that you consistently, accurately, professionally give them a case study, walk them through some of the complexities that you have dealt with, some of the challenges that you have dealt with as a listing agent. Believe me, it will all set up the partnership between you and the homeowner for success. Like any partnership, success is going to run on clarity. Both you and the client need to know exactly who owns which parts of the process, how the decisions are made, how client communications are going to flow. Discuss, agree on details before you just run in and launch something. I don't expect you to produce a racy matrix in front of them saying every part of the listing, this is what our responsibilities are. But what you don't want to do is get close to the finish line and you are entrusting go get something as simple as payoffs to your client because a title company wasn't followed up on or you trusted that they were doing it instead of checking on them every single day. And I hate to say needling, but needling them to a position that they are uncomfortable that if they don't have an answer for you by 10 o'clock the following morning, then you might show up at their office and demand to speak to the boss. And then, of course, document. If you are going to be the controller of all of these moving parts, you need to know where the levers are, when the levers were flipped, and what mechanism did that set off, and what are the next steps that are supposed to happen because of it. Every single listing can be kept on track with some great organizational tools. There's a lot of stuff that are built up there, whether it's a project management software or just a simple process flow. You need to be able to monitor where you are, what are the things that need to be completed, so you don't show up on closing, within 3 days of closing, and then the pressure gets turned up on everybody. So let's talk about responsibilities for a bit. Things that are a bit different on the listing side. Pricing and positioning. You need to understand how to do analysis and how to present that analysis back to the client. If you're not good at it, You need to work with an agent that is, or you need to work with a broker that typically has the experience in doing so. Pricing sets the tone for the entire partnership. It is where misalignment shows up first. And before you present anything to the seller, you need to be able to agree on your pricing logic. How did you come to these numbers? Comparables, go to market strategies. You want a clear story, not two competing opinions when you're walking into the door. You want to know where their mindset was in the pricing of their property. And obviously, or so I should say, for obvious reasons, they're going to be more attached to their property and believe it probably outvalues what the market is showing. They also think that their property's valuation is based on what happens in the state or in the whole city versus just their neighborhood. Usually, one misled data analysis, one misled comp, one bad tracking absorption rate will break the whole pricing model. And you have to be super careful. The listing agent pressure test is whether or not you can play devil's advocate against your price point and whether or not you can ensure that your pricing conversation is going to stay client friendly. You are not battling your client for the listing. You are proving your skill set in price appropriations and making sure to list things appropriately so that the clients and the buyers aren't avoiding your property or just showing up so they can figure out, why is this house $25,000 more than every other house in this neighborhood? Pro tip: depending on your style of communication, you need to go ahead and set yourself up for who's going to speak first, whether it's going to be you or it's going to be the client. When it comes to pricing conversation with a seller, mixed signals is going to erode confidence quickly. So if you're going to insist on hearing all of their approach first, then you need to set them up for that. Introduce them to, when I arrive tomorrow, I'd kind of like to know what you think. If you were doing this on your own, what would your pricing strategy be? What would your expectation for the price of the property hitting the market be? And be able to tell me why. You may have added things to the home that I haven't seen. You may have invested additional monies that I haven't seen. You might know of something coming up in the area that you believe adds additional value that I don't know about. And then I want to share with you everything I have. Or you could take the opposite approach. I typically take the lead approach, where my job is to show you exactly where I expect your home to be listed at. I do walk in with a little bit of a range, so there's a buffer because typically during my listing presentation, it's the first time I have seen the home itself. So I walk in with a little bit of a range, so I have some buffer, and based on the condition of the home is whether they end up on the high end of my range or on the low end of my range. But as the presenter, you better be able to explain your strategy, and you better have something to leave behind that proves your strategy. If you are walking in off the cuff, which a lot of you do, and just confidently speaking to the numbers without having something to show them, you're selling the client short. You're going to end up with a client that doesn't remember the numbers, because once they see those numbers, they won't be able to forget them. But if you just spoke through it, who knows what their memory retention is going to be. And when you disagree later on whether or not there should be a price drop or whether you should continue on your current strategy, they're not going to remember anything that you didn't put in front of them. So if you feel like you're going to ever disagree on the pricing, resolve it in advance with a piece of paper that shows everything. You need to be able to walk in, and your client needs to understand that you are a united partnership. They as the owner, you as the representative for selling the property. That's going to give them better confidence in your process and not going to have to access you for debates versus just updates. Marketing, media. Be clear on your responsibility of creative production. What are you accountable for? What are your brand consistencies? Marketing is where most listings either shine or stumble, quite honestly. Delivering and deciding early how the creative process is going to work includes copy, photos, videos, advertising spend, social media calendar, and who's going to manage that coordination. Different visual standards can also confuse both the brand and the seller. Sure, you want to differentiate yourself and differentiate this house from everything else on the market, but you still want to make sure to list the deliverable importances that the visual market is looking for. They're shopping online long before they're communicating with you. And I have a lot of clients, honestly, that struggle with why don't I have a whole lot of showings? You do. The showings are virtual because I did my job well. I did a video walkthrough. I did a video landscape. I did some drive-by drone footage. I did some neighborhood videos. I got professional photos laid out. I clearly defined what my photos were. I mix and match those photos and add new photos on the weekly to make sure I keep it mixed up so that the marketing doesn't get stagnant online. And if there is a partner agent or another agent inside of your brokerage that has a stronger marketing system, cut them in on the process and let them handle production while you go amplify the negotiations and those standards. The goal is just to increase the reach. You don't need to just create a whole bunch of redundant exercises for yourself. And let's talk about how that translates to the MLS. MLS entry is one of those tasks that seems simple until something gets missed. You need to decide up front that and define up front that the client is going to look at the post and is going to agree to the post. Sometimes I have to go so far with my clients as to send them copy and have them digitally initial it. Hey, this is what's going live on the market, or these are the changes I made today. Make sure you at minimum get a text okey doke so that they're satisfied with it, because misrepresentation out there is always on the rise, and you don't want to be that agent. You don't want to commit to something that isn't true, and you don't want to put something on copy that doesn't exist. Easiest thing that comes off the top of my head is washer and dryer. If you're not offering one, don't have it on copy. Don't have it in the MLS, because I'm coming for a credit if you don't have and if you don't appropriately advertise your listing. Make sure that you have the experience necessary to actually do the data entry. Don't half-ass this part. The MLS data is critical for not only your current listing, but next listings following you. The frustrations that you're having finding comps is because the listing agents before you didn't put in the right effort, or God forbid, just some marketing agent at a brokerage is doing all the MLS entry. Sometimes it's advantageous, but more often than not, I feel they don't fill in all the blanks. They only fill in the boxes that are required by the MLS and not a true shared aspect of all of the details that can be gathered. And then agree how you're going to handle, based on MLS, price adjustments, photo swaps, status changes. Your client needs to be aware, because they, their families, and their friends, and everybody else they have scattered your advertisement about to are going to be watching it as well. When that house flips to pending, people are going to notice, oh my God, your house is under contract. They better know it. They better know that that's what's happening before you flip it publicly. And edits. Confirm that your edits are publishing correctly. Go on to the other major search sites and at least the top 5, and double check that things are populating from the MLS to the Zillows and the Realtor.coms of the world, and make sure they're updating correctly and promptly. Otherwise, yes, you're going to have to get on the phone and have them do a manual pull of information. Remember, as much of a headache as that is, your job is to make sure that you're representing appropriately for the client. You don't really care if you have to sit on hold for technical support for 30 minutes. And they certainly aren't going to. Feedback, showings, buyer's agents. You suck at this. Come in close. You can do better. When you come and you view a listing for somebody, give them some feedback. Don't just pop. There's a reason that the showing time system sends you 3 reminders, because you were too lazy to give feedback the first time. And as listing agents, we desperately need that information. If you're thinking the price is too high, okay, but give me an explanation why. Don't just click on the first three radio buttons and be done with it. Submit so that you don't get a reminder anymore. That's crap. Do your job. You, as a buyer's agent, have a representation capability too. And sorry, the universe comes around. If you suck at being responsive and you suck at giving feedback, when it's your turn to be a listing agent, don't expect better. Showings are the heartbeat of a listing, whether virtual or in person. And it's one of the easiest places for listers to trip up. You need to be able to create a calendar of communications about how the listing is going. Decide who's going to handle showings. If you've got a co-agent, if you've got a team, if you've got a coordinator that is simply just commanding access, that's fine. But make sure that everyone on the property at all times is a professional and actively licensed agent. Way too often am I seeing listings where the agent that's showing up on site is just a cooperative agent. They're on their way to get their license. People don't understand that that is against the law inside of the real estate industry, and it can jeopardize the entire contract. I've got some agents right now that I have under investigation because they are simply operating without a valid license, and that is not okay. The feedback should be given within 24 hours. Anything else is going to help you analyze patterns, prep clients, synchronize with them on alignment, and whether or not you're going to need to change strategy as you go along. Never assume that another agent handled it. If you're expecting a buyer's agent to give feedback, listing agents, you need to call them and collect that feedback. Never lose track of a showing, a client call, a contract deadline. You want to make absolutely sure that if you're using a CRM, and you should be, that it's synchronizing seamlessly with your calendar, gives you clear, centralized view of every task you're doing. If you've got multiple listings, trust me, it can get out of control really quick. If you're a notebook and a paper guy, make absolutely sure that you're keeping accurate notes. As things are completed, check or strike through them and keep updates as to what's coming next. Now let's talk about offers and negotiations. Listing agent leads the communications on the contract, period. Especially if they have deep pricing experience and strong seller relationships with their clients. If there's a supporting agent, you're a supporting role only. The lead, always have the lead agent, the single throat to choke, if you will. This is the person that the client should be communicating with the most. The other person is supportive and backup, but always communicate with them as well. And you need to be able to, from your feedback and from the activity that you're seeing online, you should be able to review these details. You should as well flag risk. Managing the communication flow is important on all sides of the deal. And when you're dealing with offers and negotiations, you need to keep those discussions documented. Agents, those of you that are still out there using texting to negotiate, shame on you. That is not what it is for. And if I drag you into court because one of you misrepresented, your text messages are not admissible. It is not going to save you. Use email. The E stands for evidence. Evidence mail. Use it. Anything that has to do with negotiations or the life and the expectancies of how the listings are going needs to be written, documented, and email exchanged to each other. It's going to keep disagreements to a minimum. But as disagreements arise, your counter strategy is always going to be going back to the last communication you had and calling each other out on where you maybe have a misrepresentation. And then, of course, contract to close. Here's where the rubber meets the road, guys. After acceptance of a contract, As the agent on the listing side, you manage the transaction timeline. Again, buyers can go somewhere else. Listings are about representing the movement of the property. You are the heartbeat of the transaction timeline. Anybody else is just handling communications and vendor coordination. Your job is to make sure all of the cogs in the wheel are spinning like they're supposed to. Make sure that you have talked to your client in advance. Give them some worst case scenario examples. Again, I hearken back to case studies. Here's how this is going to go. Walk them through an end to end. Here's a perfect case scenario. Here's where things can get bumpy on that road. Agree how you're going to handle problems quickly, efficiently with your client, and how you're going to get in touch with them if you need a fast response. How you're going to deal with appraisals, late appraisals, shortfall appraisals, repair disputes, loan delays on the buyer side. Decide how you're going to call the client and what they're going to discuss and how you're going to speak with them and how you're going to communicate back to all of the other parties. And I suggest a nice email thread once the transaction starts with everybody on it. Transparency is going to keep that partnership between all of you smooth, and it's going to protect everyone's reputation. Sellers, remember how you handle the messy middle part, because that's the experience that you're going to grade your agent on. Some final thoughts for you for the day. Listing success is based on structure and follow through. A listing agent with a sharp plan, an ability to move quickly, communicate efficiently, and gather great value in communication is a godsend to a seller. When you align appropriately and you outline your accountabilities to your client, the partnership will become so efficient that chaos will never even enter the room. Every clear process that you build out will now be a collaboration with the other components of the transaction. The best listing agents do not rely on luck. They are going to rely on the structure and the discipline of how to handle these things from end to end, and the clear communication that generates the respect to give a clear experience and an easy flow of workflow from beginning to end. Have a great day, do good business, and continue to do better. Thanks for all of you that joined this morning. We appreciate you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye now.